everyone, and welcome to Play the Game, See the World. We are here at PAX to talk with some professional players and some former pros. My name is Matt Danner. I am the Associate Manager of Global Brand Marketing. With us here today, we have Pro Tour Hall of Famer Mike Turian. Jackie Lee. Jackie Lee is a former professional, now an Associate Game Designer with our R&D department. Also with us, we have Alexander Hayne, hailing from Canada. You can see his very impressive Pro Tour record on screen here. As well as Joel Larsson, last but certainly not least. Joel is joining us from Sweden, and here is his very, very impressive resume. So, guys, Magic Origins talked us through the origin stories of the Planeswalkers, and I guess my first question for you is, what's your origin story?
I started playing back in 1994, and my mom sent me to a leadership camp. I was in high school at the time, and I really didn't want to go to the leadership camp, but she was very insistent, so I went. And while I was there, my good friend, who I also would bowl with, he told me all about this game Magic, and I was skeptical, but every day he hounded me. It was a week-long camp, and I think by either Wednesday or Thursday, I finally was like, fine, I'll go with you to the card shop. I'll check it out. I went. I think we bought some starter decks, they were called at the time, of Revised, and I pulled a Chaos Lace, and that was it. That was the moment. I was like, oh, Chaos Lace, well, I've got to play this game. This is awesome. I can turn permanents red. Wow. This is great. I also pulled some other cards that were really fun. I think I may have gotten a Shivan Dragon, but I couldn't find it later when I looked in my collection, so I don't know. The Chaos Lace I really do remember, though. That sticks in your mind.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Jackie, how about you?
I started playing the game in middle school. Stronghold had just come out. I think it was about 1998. I'm not sure. Anyway, my girlfriend and I used to just have our decks that we scraped together from just like a few boosters or whatever, and we would just play on the back of the school bus every morning on the way to school. We went all the way in the back, which is, the crappy seat if you actually are going to middle school and not playing Magic, but they had this ledge, so we could kind of play our cards there. And we just did that, and all of my friends played in the cafeteria. We used to just like commandeer a huge table and just attack to the left or something like that. And for some reason, this game was just so fascinating to me. I so much enjoyed the interactions that I could generate with my cards and just like clicking them together. I just, for some reason, never really stopped playing for the rest of my life.
For me, it was in college. I had a friend who I played chess with, and he introduced me to the game, and he actually was there's a Magic club at my school, and he was the president of it. And in the lounge, we just would play all the time. And, I was in fact bad that this one class I had that was, the professor would just have things on a slideshow, and we'd sit in the back, and we'd play some Magic during class even. And I got hooked really quickly, and, I eventually got brought to a card store where I bought a bunch of cards and kind of learned about the more competitive side of the game. It was really awesome.
Yeah, my origin story started when I was in 8th grade, so I was probably like 13, I think, and because my brother played way before, but very shortly, and then one of my best friends started playing, and it's like, yeah, you gotta try this out, and I'm like, yeah, I've heard about that because my older brother played it like way before, so that was around Saviors of Kamigawa, I think, and we started playing. A lot of our friends in school started playing with us as well, so we started doing that, and we started going to the stores, and we found out that, like, this whole crowd playing Magic and like the possibilities you can do was great. I think all of us was really gamers, so we always wanted to like have this very deep thing to delve into, and Magic was definitely it. So we got hit pretty fast.
Cool. So it's a game that you guys played, fell in love with, and then the draw was strong enough that eventually you started traveling for events. So what was the first what was the first event that you traveled for, Mike?
Well, for me, I think the big moment in my progression towards the Pro Tour was getting a driver's license. Right, turning 16. Right before then, it's like, oh, my friend Evan and I, we'd always be begging one of our parents for a ride. But as soon as we got our license, or I got my license because I was a little older, it's like all of a sudden we had this freedom of I grew up in Pennsylvania. And so it's like, oh, we can drive to Ohio. That's so exciting, Ohio. We can cross the border of Pennsylvania and Ohio, and we would start traveling to events in Columbus and Akron, right? And I was playing Pro Tour qualifiers there. So really for me, that was the big turning point of oh wow, I can play against a whole world of people, and Ohio was the start of that journey.
For me, the first time I qualified for the Pro Tour, which was something that I'd been trying to do on and off since about original Ravnica block. Like many players, I took breaks for a year or two, and I qualified for nationals before this. But the first time I queued for the PT, which had been my goal at that time, was for Pro Tour Dark Ascension. I played in the finals of a PTQ, I played in a PTQ that was Innistrad Limited. I didn't think that my deck was very good. It was just kind of like black, white, zombie, beat down curve, but I just managed to get there. And then in the top 8, the foil Hinterland Harbor that I rare drafted mid pack 2, thinking that I just wasn't getting the stuff that I needed for my deck. I ended up using that to splash for Memories Journey flashback in my blue-red deck, and I just won the whole PTQ with it. It was very good, actually. So that was fun.
For me, it was Grand Prix Philadelphia, I think 2008. I'd won a GPT, which was the first tournament I think that other than FNM, that I'd ever won, and which at the time gave me 3 buys. So with a group of friends, including Pascal Maynard, who's now kind of become a professional himself, we actually rented a van because there were so many people, and we drove down, and it was quite a trip where Pascal and I bonded. And I didn't do so well at the tournament. I after my 3 buys, I was against Antonino De Rosa, who was one of the top pros at the time, and I got completely demolished. But it kind of fueled the flames for me to want to be competitive and kind of take things to the next level. And even though I didn't do so well, just the trip with all the friends and hang out this tournament where there's all these people doing this thing that I too love was awesome.
I think the first time when I went to a larger tournament was back when I won my first PTQ in 2010. It was for San Diego. I think Simon Gerson won, if I'm not mistaken. And it was the first really big event for me, and it was amazing. I mean, I wasn't great at that point, but it certainly opened the door for me to see that, oh, you can do this and that, and I think it was a big thing for me, and that's I think one of the reasons that I wanted to come back and do better, and here I am. It was pretty great.
It worked out, right? So, so you guys talked a little bit about traveling to Grand Prix, traveling to Pro Tours. I guess the next question is how often do you travel now?
Well, for me, I haven't played on the Pro Tour. My last Pro Tour was Pro Tour San Diego, but in 2004. So nowadays, I basically travel. I'll go to maybe 1 Pro Tour a year. I'll go to events like PAX. So I would say maybe once every few months I get to go travel. But I mean, it's still as fun as ever to go. So I really enjoy it.
When I was playing at the Grand Prix circuit, I was traveling every week for 3 out of 4 weeks a month at times. But since I've started to work at Wizards last year, I booked my travel because I drove across the country from Boston to come live in Seattle. And I played in the final team Grand Prix that was in Portland the weekend before I started work on Monday. And that was almost exactly a year ago. And since then, because I started out in development and then I moved to design, and there's just so much to learn there, I haven't really had time to travel. But this is really the first event that I've been able to come to for really any purpose, in this case commentary, but I really enjoyed just seeing the scene and all of my friends again from the pro circuit, and I hope that I can do that more frequently in the future.
So still an active pro, so I do quite a bit of traveling. I did the calculations, and last year of the 52 weekends, I was away from home for 42 of them. So I'm on the road a lot, getting a lot of frequent flyer miles and going to a lot of places. And sometimes the travel's rough, but mostly I try and go to places that I want to go to anyways, and spend extra time there. When you get to go to an awesome place, it's really cool to hang out and just see the sights, and the Magic lets you do that.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely play the game, see the world, right? So this season, I would say, is I've become more active than ever, I think, in traveling for the Pro Tours and Grand Prix. So I would estimate I travel between 10 to 15 times a year, maybe, internationally. We don't have as many Grand Prix as in the US, so but I do travel quite a lot, I would say, and that is separate countries every time. It's not within the borders, so it's quite a lot.
So you guys talked about travel there. So I guess bringing it back, what are some of your favorite cities? With 54 GPs over the year and the 4 Pro Tours, you get a chance to see a better part of the world. What are some of the standout cities that you guys recall?
I really enjoyed Barcelona. I didn't do particularly well at that event, which meant I got to go spend more time seeing the city. Of course, all of your favorite cities end up being places where you're like, well, I wish I would have done better in the Magic event there. But I mean, Barcelona, it has a great mixture of history, and the weather was wonderful, and it just for me, just going to Spain. It was really awesome. The food was awesome. The people, the culture. I would definitely recommend checking out Barcelona if you've never been.
My favorite trip for Magic was GP Costa Rica, which I traveled to a couple years ago. That was just, we all organized some tours together, so we really saw the sights for about a week before we played in the event, and it was really gorgeous. I remember seeing the sites where Jurassic Park was filmed, and just the lushness of the flora was amazing. Also, I just really liked their culture and the emphasis on education that they have, as well as I got probably the best coffee I've ever had there. So
Yeah, they do that there.
yeah. Also, when I queued for Pro Tour Dark Ascension, that was in Honolulu, and I had my honeymoon there also, so I stayed for an extra week. And whenever you get to travel for an event, if you get to stay for longer than the event itself, it's just always a huge value.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely. I've been to a lot of awesome cities in the world. I think my favorite is probably Tokyo, because Japan is just so different. It's such a big shock, culture shock, basically, to be. You effectively feel like you're a planeswalker and you've planeswalked somewhere else. And but Hawaii is great, and Barcelona. I had the opposite experience of Mike, where I did do well at the tournament, so I didn't get to see the city that much.
Oh, poor you. Yeah, I'm gonna have to I agree with Hayne with Japan overall. I haven't been to the Pro Tour in Tokyo. I've been there on person, like for vacation, but I was in a Pro Tour in Nagoya, and it was. Japan is also a Western culture, everything with that, but it's so different, like the cultural aspects and everything. Hawaii is another great place. Amsterdam is beautiful. Like if you go there, people are so nice, great food, nice, everything is great there. So a lot of good places. I could probably sit there and talk for hours, but I'm not going to do that.
So yeah, a lot of cool cities. And then I guess, who are your traveling companions when you guys are going on these longer trips? Who are you traveling with? And in terms of like preparing for events, I guess who are you preparing with? So who do you travel with? And then are you meeting your team on site or?
Well, for me, I went to college in Pittsburgh, and the guys I played with were Randy Buehler, Eric Lauer, Aaron Forsythe. So you can tell they all now work for Wizards, including myself, or have in the past. So those were the guys I would travel with most, and also like Dan Silberman, Elliot Fung, a bunch of Nate Heiss, who's my cousin, and yeah, we would fly to places. I mean, especially because often Del Loggle, Randy's wife, would often be sort of a travel agent, especially for Eric, and so she would be like, okay, here's the good flights, here's when you should go, and so that always really made it pretty easy for me because that was wonderful that she would take care of that for us. I think we probably would have missed some events had it not been for Del.
Yeah, I was talking to Dell recently about some hotel experience that I'd had, and she said she started getting nostalgic about that. When I first queued, I didn't really have a team, so primarily I just tested with like a couple friends, my husband, and when I got to the site in Hawaii, a bunch of people who had qualified for the Pro Tour for the first time, or just who weren't like mainstays of the Pro Tour, they were just staying at hostels, and we actually just kind of tested on the picnic tables outside of the hostels, and that was actually really valuable.
Yeah.
So later in my career, I mean, I would plan my travel myself and then go stay in a room with some people that we had arranged ahead of time. There was a time that I flew to Madison for a week just to draft when a new set came out. I think this was Dragon's Maze, yeah, the full Return to Ravnica block. And I played with, the Madison drafters, Sam Black, Adrian Sullivan, Brian Kowal, and that was really fun because that was just like, I don't know, such a dense pocket of awesome drafting that, yeah, it was a great experience.
Yeah, I mean, for traveling companions, I've traveled with a bunch of people over different periods of time. Used to travel with Pascal Moore and John Stern, it's people who are local, but I also travel with a lot with teammates, often between tournaments. And one of the things when you're a pro Magic player is you have these friends who live all over the world, and sometimes one weekend I'm in Florence, Italy, and then next weekend I'm in Atlantic City, and next I'm in Singapore, and then Montreal, and every weekend you see them in a different part of the world, and it's it's quite interesting, and you just you see you next week on the other side of the world is not an experience you get in other fields, I think. In terms of testing, usually I'd meet up with my team, a week and a half to 2 weeks before Pro Tours in person, and we kind of have a pretty intensive session where we play like a lot, 12 to 14 hours a day, and every day, and it's.
I think my experience with testing traveling is very comparable to Hayne's. For Grand Prix, especially, sometimes I go with my teammates, which I play test with for the Pro Tour. For example, next 2 weeks from now, there's a Grand Prix in Madrid that me and Martin Dang and his girlfriend Tina is gonna go to together. But there's also other times where I have as Hayne said, we have friends all over the world, kind of, in the scene. So sometimes you go with them, and sometimes you go with your friends from where I'm from, back in Sweden, and it's always different. But especially for Pro Tours, we, as Hayne said, I think we're pretty comparable here. we usually we try to be there at least 1.5, 2 weeks before, and it can be stressful at times, but it's really like down to the core, hardcore testing all day, all night. You don't get to see much, but that's, yeah. So then I travel with teammates more. It's definitely different from time to time.
Great. So we touched on it a little bit, but I guess the next question is, how do you prepare for events, right? So people might not be, like Jackie, you had mentioned about, flying out to Madison to test there, and Alex, you talked about like the testing houses. For people that don't know about the testing houses, how do you prepare for events? And this is more for Pro Tours than Grand Prix, but like how are you preparing, and what is the difference in preparation for each type of event?
Well, for me, I mean, of course, there was just like the regular playtest sessions. Like I said, being from Pittsburgh, we had a strong local group, and we would just all show up. Usually we'd show up at like the same restaurant, which was called the O, and we'd sort of take over the back of that restaurant and do drafts, and occasionally people or teams would travel in from New York or from Ohio, and so that was always really good when you could get together with another group, because one of the things as a group of 4 or 5 or 6 people, it's like, oh, you kind of worry that your ideas are just feeding on themselves, and you're not really getting a good perspective. So when we could get together with another group of people, we would always try to do that, because it really did, that influx of ideas would always make such a huge difference. And then on occasion we would go and do a bigger trip or get together with a larger group, and that had mixed results. I mean, I think at some point you end up with diminishing returns, right? Like having between 4 and 6 people was always a good group, or ideally 8, so you could get a draft. But once you were like above 20, it just becomes madness, and you don't know what good ideas are and what bad ideas are, because you're just everything is out there, and you kind of need a little more focus.
Yeah, I've played with a number of different groups, and I think that it depends largely on the type of event that you're testing for. So for Pro Tours, usually people will get together in a testing house, often for an entire week before the Pro Tour, and that's to test a new format as it's come out. For Grand Prix, people don't tend to do this as much. There were a series of Pro Tours. I remember Barcelona. Pro Tours and Grand Prix. It was Barcelona, and then GP Malmö in Sweden was after that. And there was something before as well, which I don't exactly recall. But we just strung all of those next to each other, and we traveled with most of the people in the same group. I remember leading up to Barcelona, we stayed at Elie Pichon's grandfather's house, which was just a gorgeous cottage in France, and we could go into the town and get these amazing sausages, and then we would just play a bunch of Magic, and it was so cool. But yeah, it really depends on how busy of a schedule the testers have, and also the size of the event, what's on the line, and you can't have a team that's too large, because not only is it difficult to communicate, as Mike mentioned, but then you have to start thinking about, well, if there are this many people all playing the same deck as me who know what I'm doing, that kind of introduces a strange dynamic as well.
Yeah, I think like both Jackie and Mike have said, having too many people on your testing team is bad. I found the sweet spot has been around 12 to 15. Working with face-to-face, we've been a pretty reasonably successful team, and it's been different iterations have had different number of people, but we generally do make it a kind of a hard rule that we always meet up a week and a half to 2 weeks before the Pro Tour to test for Pro Tours, and it's very intense. All these people who are very competitive people, very motivated, and they're all very good at Magic and just working all the time just to get better and to learn the format for both the new draft format and constructed format for Pro Tours. Grand Prix are very, very relaxing by comparison, because there's a new one and a new format every week, and the stakes aren't quite as high. So for that, I mainly prepare just talking with people online, reading articles, and kind of brushing up on from my previous knowledge, basically, of the format, just updating it with all the new information.
Yeah, exactly as Hayne said, the difference between Pro Tours and Grand Prix are obviously huge, both with the stakes and the pro points payouts. So the testing definitely goes down, or it's not as high for Grand Prix. And as Hayne said, I usually do, okay, what happened last week? What is going to be the difference at this Grand Prix, and then you can get together with others who are going there and just discuss what are people going to bring to this event and what can I do about that. For Pro Tours, I've been in a number of different groups, but mainly now we have a great group in Team Thalmo, and we start out with the spoilers. We have Facebook groups and a forum. We will all discuss new ideas and cards as they come out right away. We just have these long forums of discussions. So, oh, this card is great. No, it's not. Blah 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 blah. And that is prior to us actually getting to where we're supposed to be and testing in real person. So I think that helps us greatly as well. And then when we come here, it's always tense, as I said before. Then we're here and we need to really get down to business and test what we really think is going to be great. Sometimes we're correct, and sometimes we need to do a lot of work. Like, oh, we didn't think this was going to be great, but it is great, and that changes everything, and so on and so on. So yeah.
Great. So I guess what is the standout of your career? What would you say is the highlight of your career?
This is an easy one.
What's that?
For me, I really do feel like it was winning the Pro Tour in New York. Of course, when we were talking beforehand, like the Hall of Fame, being inducted to that, of course, is amazing. But I think the Pro Tour in New York that I won with my teammates Gary Wise and Scott Johns, I think that the fact that it was a team event, and we all had to come together from different parts of the world, right? Gary was from Canada, Scott was from the West Coast of the United States at the time, and just that the whole experience and going through it with these two other guys, right? And just overcoming such, there's so many people at Pro Tours, and you have to win for so many rounds. And doing that with other people, I just always have loved the team events for that reason. And and that was really it's one of those things that when you start playing competitively, my goal was always to win 2 Pro Tours back to back, which I guess was probably too ambitious because it didn't happen. But winning that first Pro Tour, I was like, yes, now I have a chance to win 2 back to back. It didn't happen, but it was still, just totally awesome to win it. And Gary got into the Hall of Fame, and I really think that our success on that weekend was really what put both of our careers over the top. So that was the highlight for me.
I guess the highlight for me was getting 3rd at Grand Prix Baltimore, which was Dark Ascension Standard. I had just gone 5-0 in Standard on the first day of Pro Tour Dark Ascension, and then 0-5 on the second day. So I didn't end up doing well at my first Pro Tour, but I took what I learned and I changed the deck a little. And for Baltimore, my deck was really well positioned against the metagame, which was a lot of blue-black control. So my green-red aggro deck that had a lot of swords and metamorphs and just a lot of different interactive options was very well suited for that. It was really exciting to come in 3rd, and I think that I had a really good chance of winning overall. So overall, it was just a very exciting event, and that kind of inspired a passion in me to continue trying to make gold that year in the Pro Players Club.
Well, as Joel said, it's a pretty easy one. For me, it was also winning the Pro Tour Avicen Restored in Barcelona. And it really felt like a dream. Just so many things happened that kind of was very surreal. For that Pro Tour, the way the Pro Players Club works is that there's different levels, and the one I was at the time is silver, which means I was invited to the Pro Tour, but I didn't have a flight. And my friend David Kaplan was in the same situation, and so we found out that instead of for the same price as flying there, we could take a cruise ship for 2 weeks to Barcelona, food, everything included. So we decided to do that, and on the boat we had all our block constructed decks, and we were just testing the whole time to try and figure out what was good for the Pro Tour, and ended up coming out with this miracle deck that whether or not it was actually good in hindsight is another question, but it was it was an awesome deck, and I ended up winning the Pro Tour with that deck, and it just the whole team of all these Canadians that we're all there, and just the feeling, the excitement, it's just something I'll always remember.
Yeah, I think I have to say the same. Winning the Pro Tour is definitely on the top of my list. It's all of this rush of emotions, how you have tried for so long to get there, and you finally do it, that it's almost surreal. It's this kind of is something you can dream of at night. I mean, it's crazy. And as a pro player, I often think about tournaments afterwards, or reflection. Like in a reflection, I think about, oh, I could have done this better. I maybe should have chosen this deck. This didn't go that great, and so on. And when you win a pro tour, you have this reflexes that you think back of the tournament, and you think, yeah, I couldn't have done anything else. That was great. And I think that says a lot about winning the pro tour. It's just such a peak in your career. I mean, when I came second in Montreal, the feeling was great and everything, but when you sit there at the final table and losing, that feeling is not that great. Believe me, I know. But it's obviously a great result as well. But actually winning something, as I said in my interview there, it's something different. So that is definitely the peak of my career, I think.
Cool. So knowing now where you guys have been, how you've finished, how it's all gone for you, I guess the next question is, how has the Pro Tour changed? But also, what is your expectation? Like, how has the Pro Tour changed you when you're going into these tournaments?
Well, so like I said, my last Pro Tour was quite a while. It was over 10 years ago. It was 2004 in San Diego. And I think that one of the things that has really come about since then is events like this that just finished up here, the World Championship. And the World Championship, it's morphed to, it has, there's I mean, when I was playing in it, it was, there were the teams, and it was a 400-ish person event, and I think it was 18 rounds, if I remember. It was a really long event. What's that? It was 5. Yeah, it was 5 days. Thank you, Greg. It just, it went on, and you were like, and of course, you're like, what's my record? Oh, I'm 5-9. I've never been 5-9 before, right? Or you just get to towards the end, you're like, oh, I'm 7-10 or whatever. It's just on and on. And I really think that the World Championship that we have now is just, we have the team portion set aside as a separate thing, so really you can focus on, there's this awesome team portion, the separate team event itself, right? And then the World Championship with 24 of the top players. I mean, I know that the coverage piece has changed as well, and so I've really gotten to enjoy watching that coverage where, every match is a feature match. And so, to me, that's just been the biggest change, is just having that World Championship of 24 people. I mean, it's something that I would have loved to have been able to play in.
I mean, I played primarily on the Pro Tour during the same period, so the system through which you qualified was roughly the same throughout. I guess the biggest thing that would have changed for me is the cards. So, the formats were obviously changing, and near the end of it, they were changing in a direction that I don't think optimized my very min-maxed strengths and weaknesses as well. So at that point, when I got an offer for an internship in Magic development, I decided to kind of see what was on the other side. And so at this point, I am really enjoying learning design and kind of figuring out what it is exactly that I love about Magic, because I think that if I can kind of figure that out and add more of it into the game, then I'm sure there will be people who appreciate that as well. So I guess that is my current thing with which I'm struggling.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't played on the Pro Tour that long. It's been less than 4 years since I played my first Pro Tour, so not too much has changed. The one thing that that I think is a big improvement is that it used to be that Pro Tours would pay out pro points as a pro by just standing, and now it's by record. I think that that it helps. It feels a lot better as a pro, though. It's something that most people don't really notice the effect of. But in terms of how the Pro Tours changed me, I think going in at the beginning, I was kind of I felt like a sheep. Now I'm kind of a lion. I feel I definitely have a lot more confidence after going to these events and playing with the best and seeing that I can compete. I belong here, and that's definitely been a big factor.
Yeah, as Hayne said, I haven't played on the Pro Tour for too long. My first Pro Tour was back in 2010, so I guess that's 5 years ago. I definitely seen some changes for me, but I think that's more coming from my level of skill. Back in 2010, I wasn't that great. I played time sieve in a full field of Jund. Not that great, trust me. But now, when I'm here at the World Championship, I can see all of these small details within it, because I feel like I can play with the best now. So it's hard to me to see something strictly that has changed, because the Pro Tour was so different for me as a person when I was not as good as I am now. Yeah, so tough question.
Yeah, the thing about I think the biggest thing that shocked me was not for the Pro Tour but for Grand Prix. The first Grand Prix I played in, I think, had it was Grand Prix Toronto, and I think it had under 300 people in it. And so now to see Grand Prix in the thousands, right? In the thousands, I mean, that's just it was shocking to me when it's like, oh, there's over 4,000 people playing, Modern Masters. I'm like, that's an order of magnitude more than the first Grand Prix I played in. So.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I remember the old Grand Prix in Europe wasn't that big. It was around maybe 1,000 people, but now you have to be there like the pre-register button to barely get in, because it's so popular and it's grown so much. So
right, yeah,
that's a big difference.
Yeah, it's just awesome.
So you guys talked about being some of the best players in the world. I guess, do you see yourselves as celebrities?
I know my wife. I know my wife doesn't see me as a celebrity. She, I think that there's times where it's like, oh, yep, like when I'm at an event, even a non-Magic event, and someone will come up and talk to me about Magic or recognize me, that I'm like, and I don't. So it's kind of this weird moment of like, do I know you in life, or do you just recognize me from Magic? So there's those moments, but overall, not really. I mean, I feel like it's like, oh, yep, being in the Hall of Fame, it's an awesome accomplishment. It's really amazing. But, like I said, when I talk to my wife, she puts me in my place.
Yeah, like Mike, I don't really perceive myself as a celebrity. There have been times when I felt like I was doing really well, and certainly a lot of people would approach me and tell me that I had inspired them, or they really enjoyed an article that I wrote or something like that. And I really enjoyed that as part of my work. I found it very fulfilling to know that I had touched people's lives. But overall, I think the thing that has drawn me to Magic is the quest of self-improvement, and to just view everything with beginner's mind, as they call it, is, I think, one of the things that has brought me success, so I try to continue to do that.
Yeah, I mean, just like Jackie, the reason I got into Magic was kind of to self-improve, to become the best, and to, not to become famous, just to become good for, the sake of just actually improving. But in terms of whether I view myself as a celebrity now, it's strange, because I'm not a real celebrity. If I can go out on the street, I don't have to wear sunglasses and get ducked into cars when people go by. But if I go to a Magic tournament, then there's a large number of people who will recognize me and come up to me and say they're a big fan, or that they want an autograph. I think that's awesome. And that I kind of have the superpower that I get to turn on my celebrity when I want to.
It is a good power.
I mean, it has happened that people have recognized me occasionally outside of tournaments. Like once I was in a grocery store and someone was like, "Oh, hey, you won that Pro Tour, didn't you?" And that happens, but I don't really view myself as a celebrity. I like to think I can stay a little humble and
sure. You're trying at least.
And failing, I guess.
Yeah, as usual. Yeah, I agree. I don't perceive myself either as a celebrity. I played this game for so long, and it's become such a part of me as my personality and everything, and this is what I do, so I just go and do it. But there's definitely times, as Hayne said, I have a good story from right after the Pro Tour. I went to Berlin for vacation, and my brother lives there with his girlfriend. So we were out middle of night. It's very dark in a suburb called Kreuzberg, and we were out in a park and we were chatting, and this is guy coming up to me and it's like, hey, and I'm like, yeah. And he's like, oh, you're Joel Larsson, you won that Pro Tour. I think it's middle of nowhere, and those moments do happen, so I agree with that. And then you feel like a celebrity for 10 seconds. And, but it's also times where, especially at PAX, when there's so many Magic players roaming around, is that you can get this looks at you where it seems like they know you, but you haven't seen them before. And that can be weird in some sense, because maybe they're too polite to come up and so on. And you should definitely come up and say hi. I mean, I don't have claws or anything, so definitely do that.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of like secondhand, oh, this person said your hair is cool, or they thought your thing was, and I'm just like, yeah, they should just come up and talk to me, because it's like
I don't
not
bite.
scary.
Yeah,
Cool.
no, always, it's always good to see fans come up and interact with you, and it's great, and they should not be afraid. We're just people like yourself. I remember when I was starting out that I, put the pros on a pedestal and was too nervous to, come out of this. I go to my first Grand Prix, and wow, that's Kenji Samura, and just I was too nervous to
I
actually
like
go
that
up
you're
and
pointing up to. Very hard.
But yeah, I mean, just come say hello if you want.
Yeah,
So
I completely agree.
The takeaway is if you see a pro player, approach with a smile and introduce yourself.
Yes. Please do. It's very fulfilling, as Jackie said. It's nice.
Cool. So you guys have been all over the world with Magic. So what is your favorite story from your travels?
For me, what I go back to and I think about is just that the first Pro Tour I went to, which was Pro Tour Chicago in 1997. And so it was myself and Randy Buehler and Eric Lauer and Dan Silberman. And Randy would always drive because he owned a stick shift, and he was the only one who knew how to drive a stick shift. And I intentionally avoided learning how to drive a stick shift so that way I would not have to drive. So Randy would always drive us to all of the events we go to, that's a good tip just in case you are interested in traveling a bunch. But we'd been practicing for the Pro Tour for maybe a month or 2 months, and while Randy had settled on the Necro deck that he eventually ended up winning the Pro Tour with, for me, I always like to play aggressive decks, and so I didn't want to play Necro, and I really didn't have a deck. I mean, I'd been practicing a bunch, and we knew the format really well, but basically the entire trip, it was like 8 hours from Pittsburgh to Chicago, and the entire car ride was Lauer and myself and Randy and Dan just brewing my deck for the event. And so we got there, and we're like, it's the night before, and like, oh, can we put together the cards? And that was really the deck that I built a red-white deck, it turns out, which is very unlike me. No, I play red-white all the time. So I was really happy with the deck, and I remember my first round opponent, I think, was Tommy Hovey, who at the time, I don't think he had won 2 Pro Tours yet, but was soon going to have won his second Pro Tour. And like, I have this deck, and I had never played it before in my life, and I end up beating him, and I end up coming in 27th in the event. So, like, to me, that's just a really fond memory, and it kind of encapsulates that whole, what does it mean to be a pro, and what does it mean to like travel around with these guys and try to succeed, because it was these weeks and months of preparation, and really in the 24th hour we find, or 25th hour, we put together a deck that really worked for me, so it was awesome.
For me, the memory that stands out, it was actually when I wasn't qualified for the upcoming Pro Tour about 1.5 years ago, maybe. So I was traveling to a local PTQ in New Hampshire with some local players from Boston, and I know that my friend was really nervous because he was missing about 6 cards from his standard deck. And I was like, yeah, it's fine, don't worry about it. We'll meet, our friends there, and we'll probably be able to borrow, or the store will have some, like, you're gonna be fine. And midway driving up there, we realized that I had left all of the cards that I'd borrowed from my local game store at home. So I only had about like 18 cards out of my 75 that I needed. And we arrived at the tournament exactly when the PTQ was supposed to start. But they had misnumbered the tables, so they needed to redo everything. But even through all this, it seemed like there was no way I would get to play. But somehow, you know, my friends asked their friends, and then suddenly everybody just came forth with their cards to lend me, and I got like a playset of Thasa's Master of Waves, Sphinx's Revelation. I was playing this mono blue Devotion Esper hybrid, and the fact that all of that stuff came together, and these people's generosity and compassion for a fellow Magic player that they could just see needed some help, I felt like that was so amazing, and I was so grateful. And I also felt like it was such a great allegory for Magic, because the people that you meet and, you know, the amount that they're willing to go to lengths to help you out, that is one of the best things about playing this game.
Completely agree.
So my story is a little different. I was traveling in Australia with my friend Jacob Wilson, and you know, in Australia they have a lot of small animals. So often, you know, we would check our shoes every morning to make sure there's no spiders in them and so on. Anyways, I went to sleep in our hotel room, and then I woke up, reached for my glasses, and on top of my glasses is a snake. And I just immediately, instinctively grab it and throw it as quickly as I can. And it actually, Jacob happens to be standing right in front there, and it hits him right on his side, leaving a big bruise. It turns out it was not a real snake. Jacob, while I was sleeping, had gone and purchased a plastic snake to try and prank me and placed it on top of my glasses while I was sleeping. But it sure backfired because...
Yeah, I think one of the many stories that I'm especially fond of is I was in my the first Pro Tour I did really well was in Pro Tour Nagoya, and after the event we had our nationals just a week after, so I had to travel directly from Japan to Sweden and then play in nationals, so that was kind of tough. But there was back in the day when our friend Jason Maniscalp in So Much Music wasn't banned yet, so I had to make my list, right? So I was sitting on the plane between Japan and China and started writing my deck on a napkin on the airplane, and I ended up playing 73 of the 75 cards, I think, and I think I won 18 games straight or something with that, starting out 9-0 or something. So that was kind of a nice story. Yeah, I remember that quite well.
So these next ones are more of a rapid fire. So I've seen some chatter on the internet, and I have a personal opinion, and there's been a lot of debate on this, but what's the best format?
For me, definitely draft. If I had to pick a specific draft format, I'd probably pick Tempest only draft. So Tempest. I just love everything about that format. It's tons of fun to play.
You and Oleroda would be great friends.
I'm another limited player. I only play constructed when the format is either really good or when I have to, because that's the format of a Grand Prix or Pro Tour. So probably my favorite draft format of all time is Triple Innistrad. I just felt like there were so many different interactions that you could play, and like the graveyard decks, and there were also tempo decks, and the multicolored flashbacks. I remember. That was a masterful format.
Yeah, I think there was maybe one unplayable card in the entire set. Every weird card went into some really weird archetype.
Exactly.
And they all worked out.
I love that.
It was a great format.
Yeah, I mean, I like constructed more than other people do, I think. But I think my favorite format still is actually cube draft, like high-powered cube draft, where it feels like it's combining a lot of the best parts of limited and constructed, because you're kind of drafting a constructed deck. So you still have the kind of complex strategies I find you often get in the constructed games, but you also get to draft a deck and just build it on the fly, and I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think I have a two-way answer to this question. First off, as the others have mentioned, I love draft. It's one of the things that hooked me on the game the most, I think. So I've drafted quite a bit in my life. And I think the second one is, I don't know if you expected it, but I actually love 1 versus 1 EDH or Commander with the French ban list. It's very different from multiplayer Commander. It's kind of more competitive, but as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that hooked me on Magic was the depth you can delve into, and 1 versus 1 EDH. There's quite a bit of depth to go in there, especially as a like a brewer like me. I love to brew decks, and this is something different. So I love that format and draft, of course.
So the next question is actually one that I'm sure you guys get a lot. But what advice would you give to someone who's trying to get better?
Yeah, it is a question that that we get asked a lot. For me, I have pretty simple advice. It's just play a lot. I mean, I know a lot of people spend a lot of time like reading articles or jotting things down in their notebook, and that's all. I mean, that's all part of it too. I mean, those are important, but really just I mean, like I've played thousands of probably tens of thousands of games of Magic, and I've done played in over 1,000 events, right? And so because of that and because of that time, you just get to the point where you just like you're just clicking and everything. You're like, oh, you know what your opponent's gonna cast before they cast it, and you only really hit that point after you've just played tons and tons. So it's pretty simple advice, but it's really true and it really works because I mean, Magic's fun, and if you're having fun doing it, it's this. It just makes it pretty easy to just go play more because you're already having fun.
Yeah, that's certainly the most important thing I think to preparing is to just get a lot of hours in. I think that I've seen a lot of players who get frustrated because they feel like, they're at this certain level and they feel like they just can't get past it. Something is holding them back. And I think often in those instances, it's actually just the frustration itself, because enjoying something, like truly having deep fun doing the thing that you're doing, that is what motivates us to kind of achieve the highest levels of whatever we're trying to do. So I think that it's important to listen to your gut feelings sometimes when that happens. And like, if you're just not having fun, maybe you should just like switch to formats and just play draft for a while, or take a break and just play Commander or something like that. It's important to not overstress yourself, because if you put excess pressure on yourself, it's going to just cause this snowballing chain reaction that takes a long time to recover from that. So just really have fun.
Yeah, I mean, people do always ask, how to get better, and the fact is there's no shortcut, there's no secret ingredient that you're just missing. You have to play a lot, you have to have focus testing, you need to seek out people who are better than you are and practice with them. It's like a mistake people make a lot, I think, is actually just playing a lot without actual purpose to why they're playing, without actually playing. The quality of your play basically matters a lot too, and when you're testing, you should be testing, trying to find out something rather than just playing games for the sake of playing. You want to always be trying to learn something when you're playing a game of Magic, and that's how, from that learning continually, you eventually improve.
Yeah, I agree. You can take it from very two different perspectives. We have talked about that jamming a lot of games is good, and also doing it with a purpose. And I think it can go either way. If you have a set format that you know that okay, we need to fix this and this and this, then you can propose play on purpose and try to find these things out. But if it's a wide format and you have no idea, then it's obviously great to play a lot of games, because then, as Jack talked about, you get to trust your gut much more. I think I was at a certain peak where I played prior to Nagoya. Me and my friend, we played, I don't know, for 2 months or something. That was before the set was released, just before the Pro Tour, and I could sit against him in a game and like, okay, now you're having mana leak, and next turn we'll play this, and like Mike said, and this taking is when you get into this in the zone, as they say. But there's also some small tips you can do. You should definitely play with better people that are better than yourself, but I think it's very important to feel that you're comfortable with them and that you can trust them. I think that's a big thing. And also, if you feel like you play with people that are better than you, please don't mind any critique. That should always be very, very welcome to get critique. I when I started playing, we were playing in the store, and it was more of a harsh environment because it was kind of a hierarchy in the store. So all the older players that you looked up to always keep on bashing on you, but you learn so much from that. So you should definitely take critique within you, even though it sounds bad or not. I think so.
Yeah, you have to leave your ego a bit at the door and kind
Yes, for
of,
sure.
be really self-analyze yourself and figure out that where you could have done better in every game you play. There's almost always somewhere where you made a mistake, and trying to avoid kind of like blaming your losses on luck, and as well as also analyzing your wins for things you could do better. Those are both really important things.
But I think you have to remember always that you don't want to turn this kind of strategizing, how to like this advanced thinking into a grind. I think that's very important. Yes, this is something you have to want to do. Otherwise, it will tear you down very quickly, I think.
So they're telling me that that's time, guys. But what I'm hearing here at the end is it should have been play the game, have fun, see the world. So
Sure.
awesome. On behalf of myself and Wizards, thank you guys for coming out here today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.